Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
General Hospital spoilers are in for Friday, November 7, 2025. In the coming occasion, suckers can anticipate Charlotte Cassadine to map. Carly Spencer visits Valentine Cassadine. Plus, Ava Jerome impresses Jen Sidwell. Keep reading, and let's talk about what's coming up in the ABC Cleaner pieces. Laura Collins' political setback. Let's launch with Laura Collins. She faces a reversal in her mayoral crusade. In an exercise clip for Hereafter's occasion, Laura meets with Lulu Spencer. The mayor tells the Intelligencer that tonight could make or break Port Charles. Meanwhile, Sonny Corinthos and Jason Morgan meet up. The mob master will give the right-hand man an update on everything. Still, Jason suggests that they strike now before it's too late. Read further. Find out what happened on the last occasion of GH Valentine Cassadine's future General Hospital spoilers for Friday, November 7th, reveal that Carly will go by disguise to visit Valentine again. The Golden is only using a disguise but has fake credentials from Damian Spinelli. In this coming visit, Carly assures Valentine that if everything goes well, also he wouldn't ever have to see the inside of a cell again. Read this General Hospital spoilers. Martin transitions to full-blooded villain. Laura becomes coming target. Jen Sidwell impressed as for Ava. She meets with Sidwell and manages to impress the villain. Being her usual attractive tone, Ava warns him in a sultry way that there will be no place to hide. Sidwell looks so impressed. I wonder if he could end up having a love with the art gallery proprietor. It clearly would get Ava back into Windmere. Read this General Hospital spoilers. Tracy turns the tables. Quartermaines pay the price for choosing Ronnie. Charlotte Cassadine strategizes. Suckers can also anticipate to see Emma and Charlotte put their heads together. The two are likely to come up with some kind of plan. Still, Emma will also face another handicap. Britt tells Emma that they aren't going to be working together. Friday, November 7, 2025 at the WSB office, suckers can anticipate Jocelyn Jacks to get her new orders. While she doesn't like lying to her family, this seems to go beyond keeping a secret. This time, Jocelyn has to get near to Lucas Jones. Jack Brennan wants Jocelyn to get Lucas to open up about Marco Rios. Also, an exercise clip for Hereafter shows Jack telling Jocelyn with an unbothered voice, "That's exactly the type of break that we need." General Hospital spoilers for Friday, November 7th, reveal that Carly Spencer will have some news for Valentine Cassadine while Jason Morgan and Sonny Corinthos plot. Britt Westbourne will also shut down Emma Scorpio Drake, so then's what GH suckers can anticipate. For starters, Laura Collins will admit to Lulu Spencer that tonight could make or break Port Charles. There's a lot riding on this election, so Laura will sweat the worst when a last nanosecond mayoral crusade extremity hits hard. At Steinmauer, Carly will pay Valentine another visit and admit that if all goes according to plan, he'll no way see her in that place again. Of course, that's because Carly gave Jack Brennan a punch to transfer Valentine to a stateside captivity rather. Valentine will get the rearmost news and help Carly out with the coming phase of her plan. In Brennan's office, he'll get updates from Jocelyn Jacks now that she's heard Marco Rios prompting Lucas Jones to move in with him. Brennan may suppose this will give Jocelyn Jackson reason to snoop around Windmere and argue that this is exactly the type of break they need. Of course, we should also mention the phone call that Brennan just entered. Although it sounded like Anna Devane's voice on the other end of the line, it seems likely that it's AI since Anna was locked up the last time suckers saw her. Anna preliminarily heard a voice that sounded like Caesar Faison, so that may have been AI, too. Whatever the case, it'll be intriguing to see if Brennan is getting pulled into a trap. Meanwhile, Britt will advise Emma that they wouldn't be working together as further pressure breaks out. Emma might try to steal Britt's crucial fob herself since Rocco Falconeri's first attempt failed, but she may be out of luck. Nonetheless, Emma and Charlotte Cassadine will do some strategizing in Friday's GH occasion as they continue conniving a lab break heft and beast testing arrestment. As for Ava Jerome, she'll have a kittenish converse with Jen Sidwell and allude about there being no place to hide. Since Ava's going to do commodity to impress Sidwell, she may assume shady effects are passing at Windmere and suggest Lucas move in at Windmere could be parlous. Sidwell might appreciate the fact that Ava is smart and doesn't beat around the backcountry. Both Ava and Sidwell are lodging for Marco's happiness with Lucas, so that'll give them a reason to bond. Over with Jason, he'll have a meeting with Sunny and suggest perhaps they should take the shot before it's too late. This may be about raising their tactics when it comes to handling Sidwell before he truly takes over PC. General Hospital spoilers say Sunny and Jason will try to nail down their coming move, so stay tuned. The air in the chapel at General Hospital was thick with a fragile peace, a sanctity hard won against the relentless tide of Port Charles chaos. It was a bubble, delicate as a soap film, holding back the storm for one precious moment. Inside, the soft, diffuse light from the stained glass windows cast kaleidoscopic patterns on the faces of the assembled few, a small circle bound by love, loyalty, and shared trauma. At the center of it all was the infant Danny Morgan, cradled in the arms of his mother, Sam McCall. Today was his baptism, a day meant for blessings, for new beginnings, for washing away the past and anointing a future filled with hope. But in Port Charles, the past is a ghost that refuses to be exorcised, and the future is a promise written in smoke. The ceremony began with the gentle, resonant voice of the priest, his words a familiar balm. We are gathered here today in the sight of God to welcome Daniel Morgan into the community of faith. Sam's eyes, shimmering with unshed tears, met those of Jason Morgan, the child's father. In that look was a universe of history, a tangled web of love, loss, separation, and a hard-fought reconciliation. Jason stood tall, his usual granite exterior softened by the profound significance of the moment. His posture was protective, a sentinel at the gates of this fragile happiness. Beside him, standing as a best man in all but name, was his steadfast brother, Drew Kane. The symmetry was not lost on anyone, the two men, once two halves of a shattered whole, now united in their support for this child. The priest continued, his voice a steady drone against the frantic beating of Sam's heart. Do you, as parents and guardians, promise to raise this child in the faith, to teach him the ways of righteousness and love? Sam's I do was a clear, firm whisper, a vow etched into her very soul. Jason's response was deeper, more visceral. I do. For a man of few words, the phrase carried the weight of an unbreakable oath. It was not just a promise to the church, it was a vow to his son. A vow to protect, to provide, to be the father he had so often feared he could not be. It was a renunciation of the violence that had defined so much of his life, a commitment to a different kind of strength. Drew watched the exchange, a complex mix of emotions playing across his face. There was pure joy for his brother, a deep, abiding love for Sam and the child he himself had once believed was his, and a lingering sorrow for the years stolen from them all. He leaned over slightly, his voice a low, encouraging murmur meant only for Jason. You're doing great, Jason. This is who you are now. This is your life. Not the past. Not the violence. This. Jason gave a barely perceptible nod, his jaw tight. Drew's words were a lifeline, pulling him back from the edge of the old instincts that still hummed in his blood. He focused on the sight of the priest's hand hovering over the baptismal font, the water shimmering, pristine and holy. It represented everything he was fighting for: purity, a clean slate, a life untainted by the blood and shadows of his former existence. It was at that exact moment, as the priest dipped his fingers into the sacred water, that the bubble burst. The heavy oak door of the chapel creaked open, slicing through the solemnity. All heads turned. Framed in the doorway was Detective John Jacks, his usually impeccable appearance disheveled. His tie was askew, his hair was windswept, and his eyes held a wild, frantic energy that was utterly alien to the composed billionaire. He wasn't there for a baptism. He was a man possessed, a messenger of the storm they had all tried to keep at bay. His gaze swept the room, instantly locking onto Jason. He didn't speak, but the message in his eyes was screaming, urgent, and catastrophic. He gave a sharp, almost imperceptible jerk of his head. A cold dread, colder than the baptismal water, trickled down Jason's spine. The father receded, the enforcer emerged. The softness in his eyes vanished, replaced by a flinty, focused intensity. The transition was instantaneous and terrifying. Excuse me, Jason muttered, his voice a low growl that betrayed none of the turmoil suddenly raging within him. He moved with a predator's grace, stepping away from the font, away from his son, and toward the impending abyss. Sam's hand shot out, gripping his arm. Her eyes were wide with fear and a silent plea. Don't go. Not now. Not today. He met her gaze for a fraction of a second, and the apology in his was a physical pain. But he had to. He gently, firmly, pried her fingers from his arm. It was the gentlest of actions that felt like the most brutal of separations. Drew moved to intercept him. Jason, whatever it is, it can wait, he said, his voice firm, trying to be the voice of reason, the anchor to this new life they were all building. No, Jason said, the single word final and absolute. It can't. He strode out of the chapel, and the door swung shut, muting the sounds of the ceremony, leaving a void of silence and fear in his wake. The sacred moment was shattered, replaced by a chilling premonition. In the stark, sterile hallway, a world away from the chapel's sanctity, Jax wasted no time. It's about Anna, he breathed, his voice ragged with panic and fury. We have a name. Jason's entire body went still. Anna Devane was more than a friend, she was an ally, a pillar of moral strength in a city that often had little. Her kidnapping had been an open wound, a mystery that had festered for weeks, leaving a trail of fear and frustration. Jason had thrown the full, formidable weight of his resources into finding her, but the trail had been expertly covered, the kidnapper a ghost. Who? The word was a blade. Jax's face contorted, a mask of disbelief and rage. It's not just a name, Jason. It's a betrayal. It's Valentine. The name landed not like a spoken word, but like a physical blow. Valentine Cassadine. The revelation was so audacious, so diabolically clever, that for a moment, Jason's formidable mind refused to process it. Valentine? The man who had professed his love for Anna, who had played the devoted, if complicated, partner. The man who had stood in her living room, his face a mask of convincing concern, offering theories and assistance, all while knowing exactly where she was. The sheer, breathtaking duplicity of it was a masterclass in Cassadine treachery. He's been playing us all, Jax spat, his hands clenching into fists. Every single one of us. The worried lover, the frantic partner. It was all a performance. He has her, Jason. He's had her this entire time. The pieces began to click into place with a terrifying, brutal logic in Jason's mind. Valentine's resources. His intelligence network, rivaling even the WSB's. His cold, calculating nature, hidden beneath a veneer of old-world charm. He had the means, the motive, and the utter lack of morality. But why? Why kidnap the woman he claimed to love? Control? Leverage? Or was it some twisted, dark corner of the Cassadine family game that only he understood? The questions were a torrent, but they were secondary. The only thing that mattered now was the truth. And the consequence. A low, guttural sound rumbled in Jason's chest. It was the sound of a beast awakening. The carefully constructed walls of his new life, the vows of peace, the promise of a gentler path, crumbled into dust. They were lies he had told himself, fantasies he had dared to believe in for the sake of his son. But this world, Port Charles, did not allow for such fantasies. It demanded a response in kind. It demanded blood and iron. He turned from Jax, his movements no longer just purposeful, but lethal. The hallway was no longer just a hallway, it was a path to a reckoning. Jason, wait. Jax called after him. We need a plan. We need to call the PCPD, the WSB. Jason didn't break stride. No, the PCPD moved with the shackles of procedure. The WSB moved with the ambiguity of politics. Jason Morgan moved with the unadulterated force of vengeance. Plans were for people who had time. Anna did not have time. Every second she was in Valentine's hands was a second of torment, of psychological manipulation, of God knows what else. His destination was not a question. The Metro Court penthouse. Valentine's lair. Back in the chapel, a hollowed-out silence had descended. The priest, flustered, had paused the ceremony. Sam stood frozen, the weight of her son in her arms feeling both immense and terrifyingly fragile. Danny, sensing the shift in tension, began to fuss, his small whimpers echoing in the quiet room. Drew's encouraging words now felt like ash in his mouth. He placed a steadying hand on Sam's shoulder. "I'll go," he said softly. "I'll find out what's happening." He slipped out of the chapel, his own heart hammering. He found Jax pacing in the hallway, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of utter desperation. "Jax? What the hell is going on?" Drew demanded. "It's Valentine," Jax repeated, the name still tasting like poison. "He has Anna." Drew felt the blood drain from his face. The implications were staggering. "Valentine? Are you sure?" "The intel is solid," Jax insisted. "And Jason, he just left. He's going after him." A cold dread seized Drew. He knew his brother. He knew the history that was written in the scars on Jason's body and soul. The man who had just vowed to renounce evil and spiritual warfare was now heading directly into its heart, armed with a rage that could consume everything in its path, including himself. "God help Valentine," Drew whispered, but the prayer was not for salvation, it was a grim acknowledgement of the hell that was about to be unleashed. The journey to the Metro Court was a blur of steel and motion. Jason's motorcycle wove through the Port Charles traffic with a terrifying, single-minded velocity. The wind whipped against him, but he didn't feel it. He felt only the white-hot fire of his fury. The encouraging words from the chapel, Drew's voice, Sam's hopeful eyes, were now a distant echo, a melody from a life he was no longer permitted to live. They were for the man he had hoped to become. But the man he was, the man the situation demanded, was the man who solved problems with his fists, his will, and if necessary, a gun. He didn't bother with the elevator. He took the stairs to the penthouse two at a time, his footsteps echoing like drumbeats in the concrete well. He didn't ring the bell. He didn't knock. He drew back his leg and drove his boot heel into the door just beside the lock with every ounce of his strength. The wood splintered with a sickening crack, and the door flew inward, crashing against the wall. Valentine Cassadine was standing in the center of the lavish living room, a crystal tumbler of amber whiskey in his hand. He wasn't startled. He had been expecting this. He turned, a slow, deliberate movement, his expression one of infuriating calm. He was dressed impeccably, as always, a smirk playing on his lips. "Jason," Valentine said, his voice smooth as silk. "I'd say this is a surprise, but we both know that would be a lie. Though, I must say, I expected a call first. Manners, you know." Jason advanced into the room, the space seeming to shrink with his presence. The air grew cold. "Where is she?" Valentine took a slow sip of his whiskey, savoring it. "Where is who?" "You'll have to be more specific. My social calendar is rather full." The control, the arrogance, was a spark on a gas trail. Jason crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping mere inches from Valentine. He was taller, broader, and radiating a violence that was almost palpable. "Anna," Jason snarled, the name a curse. "You took her. Where is she?" Valentine's eyes, those cunning, cold Cassadine eyes, met Jason's without a flicker of fear. He actually had the audacity to smile, a thin, cruel line. "Ah, Anna. A fascinating subject. But I'm afraid you're operating under a misapprehension. I did not take Anna. I protected her." "You're a liar." "Am I?" Valentine set his glass down with a precise click. "The world is a very dangerous place for a woman like Anna Devane. Her work with the WSB, her countless enemies, she was a target. I simply moved her to a location where I could guarantee her safety. A location where the wolves circling her could not reach." The twisted logic, the narcissistic justification, was breathtaking. Jason's hand shot out, grabbing a handful of Valentine's expensive silk tie and shirt, twisting it, pulling him close until they were nose to nose. He could smell the whiskey on Valentine's breath, see the faint, triumphant gleam in his eyes. "You have 3 seconds to tell me where she is." Jason's voice dropped to a deadly whisper, each word measured and sharp as a scalpel. "Or I will tear this city apart, brick by brick, starting with you. And I won't stop until I find her." For the first time, a crack appeared in Valentine's composure. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was the dawning realization that he was not dealing with a rational opponent, a spy who understood the rules of their shadow war. He was dealing with an elemental force. Jason Morgan, unleashed, was not a man to be reasoned with, bribed, or threatened. He was a juggernaut. "You are making a very grave mistake," Valentine hissed, his own anger finally surfacing. "You have no idea what you are interfering with. This is bigger than you, bigger than your petty street wars." 1. "You think your threats frighten me? I am a Cassadine. We have ruled empires and toppled governments. You are a common thug." 2. The word hung in the air, final and absolute. Jason's free hand balled into a fist, the knuckles white. The promise of brutal, immediate pain was in his eyes. It was the language Valentine understood best, raw, unchained power. The smirk finally vanished from Valentine's face, replaced by a snarl. "You touch me, and you will never see her alive again. Is that what you want, Morgan? To be the reason Anna Devane dies? Her blood would be on your hands, not mine. You would have to live with that. You would have to look your son in the eye, having just been blessed in the house of God, knowing you murdered an innocent woman in your reckless fury." It was a masterstroke. A psychological bullet aimed directly at the one vulnerability Jason had, his conscience, his new vow, his love for his family. The image of the baptismal font, of Sam's terrified eyes, flashed in his mind. The encouraging words of his brother echoed, then died. He was trapped between the man he vowed to be and the monster the situation required. He released Valentine with a shove of disgust, sending him stumbling back a step. Valentine straightened his tie, a flicker of triumph returning to his eyes. He believed he had won. He believed he had found the leash on the beast. He was wrong. Jason's anger did not dissipate, it transformed. It cooled from a roaring inferno into a block of glacial, diamond-hard ice. The threat was no longer a hot, impulsive promise. It was a cold, calculated guarantee. "You misunderstand me, Valentine," Jason said, his voice so quiet it was more terrifying than any shout. "This isn't a negotiation. This is your obituary. If one hair on Anna's head is harmed, if she is not returned to this room, unharmed, within the next 24 hours, I will not just kill you." He leaned in again, his blue eyes burning with an intensity that finally, truly, made Valentine Cassadine flinch. "I will destroy you. I will take everything you have. Your money. Your power. The Cassadine name. I will burn it all to the ground. I will turn every ally you have into an enemy. I will expose every secret, dismantle every enterprise, and leave you with nothing. And when you are standing in the ashes of the empire you built, utterly and completely alone, then I will find you. And only then will I end you." He let the words sink in, let the vivid, inescapable reality of that promise paint itself in Valentine's mind. "This is not a threat from a common thug," Jason concluded, the ghost of his baptismal vow lending his words a sacred, terrifying weight. "This is a vow. From a father. From a man who has nothing left to lose if you harm someone he cares about. The clock starts now." Jason turned and walked out of the shattered penthouse door, leaving a stunned and, for the first time, genuinely frightened Valentine Cassadine in his wake. The baptism was over. The war had begun. And in the quiet of the chapel, the holy water in the font stood still, its purpose forgotten, a symbol of a peace that had been mercilessly, irrevocably, washed away.